Welcome to SandCity Sports. I am your host, the Cape Cod Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King, and we're back again to bring you all the sports and current events news stories that you need to know. Folks, only one place to start with the N.B.A. season. 7 days away and counting. I'm almost down to the minutes and the hours. You know, we're filming, in the afternoon here, 5 o'clock. I don't know if there's going to be any games next Tuesday, the 22nd at 5 o'clock. I don't think so. I think the games probably start in prime time. But we are counting down, and it is quite thrilling, exciting, captivating, motivating for the basketball faithful out there. But with that being said, we have to begin with this China controversy that continues to sprawl and spin and spiral, if you will. Is it in control? Is it out of control? We'll take a look. But last night, Lebron James tweeted, and I believe this press conference was in the evening. But, or you might not know. I can't assume people out there. He's not happy. LeBron James is not happy with Daryl Morey. This was last night. And today, Tuesday the 15th, many people, I don't want to say the mass, I don't want to speak for everybody, but the majority of opinion today in regards to LeBron James from journalists, from the sports media community, from fans, they are not happy with LeBron James. And goodness, it just shows, this is really and truly a brave new world. Are we in, the quote-unquote matrix, or has it become, I'm a little bit older than some, so I go back to Terminator 2. There's a new Terminator film coming out. Arnold is still Arnold. He's doing his thing. But me, and in my heyday, if you will, that was the Terminator 2 days. But it just, this world, this futuristic society, and then maybe even a generation before, my parents' generation, it was the Jetsons. Where am I going with this? From your phone, a tweet on your social media could create an international incident, international controversy, billions of dollars. They're burning LeBron James' jersey in the streets of Hong Kong. This all started, right here, boom. Somebody with a little smartphone. They got up, Daryl Morey got up, and he put together a 7-word tweet. You can see I'm getting, you see I'm getting some little, what it is. Usually it's the bill collectors and people, hunting me down on my social media, and then people telling me that I'm late. That's just, how I get down, But from these humble beginnings, this is where we're at, and this could clearly, we're going to start the regular season in the N.B.A., one of the most promising regular seasons in N.B.A. history. Some of the most talented and explosive and dynamic rookies the league has ever seen. Clearly, Zion, but not just Zion, many others. These rookie classes have been getting better and better year after year. The league has completely reshaped itself, reformed itself. We have parity. We have competition top to bottom. Western Conference 1 through 15. Here in the Eastern Conference in Titletown, we're looking for a bounce-back year. These Celtics are going to be in the mix. They're a blue-collar bunch that's going to get it done. So many positive and encouraging and uplifting things to talk about going into a new season. Nonetheless, they all take a back seat to the NBA and China. And however you want to break it down, is it Daryl Morey versus China? Is it the NBA versus China? Is it East versus West? Is it the United States versus China? All of these additional layers of our society and of our lives, frankly, which are more important. Let's make that clear as well. We love sports. It does tremendous things, but sports is not fundamental to a society. People getting along with each other is. We're not going to have no NBA finals. We're not going to have prime time on ESPN and TNT, if we have major social strife. All right? We're not going to have all of these things if we don't have these economies functioning effectively to get it all done. All right, that has to be said. So sometimes we forget, because of the importance. The sports, our societies, it's not necessary. It's certainly a benefit, and I'll go to bat with anybody, in terms of that. But what this issue has kind of brought out, is all of those layers underneath before we get to athletics. Okay? People, again, dealing with people. People having work and employment to be able to sustain themselves. Okay? Those businesses functioning in a way that allows for growth and for others, to my words here, to participate. All right, I get worked up. Those are the layers that we are looking at and that are being revealed, all again starting, with a 7-word tweet from somebody's smartphone when they might have just had a bad morning. Okay, so that's my in terms of this society. It's just different. We live, you can do and create tremendous upheaval, again, in the billions of dollars, and on a global level through this social media. Okay, so that rip-roaring and I'm stuttering and all kind of things. Okay, so now let's get down to the basics. All right, and so LeBron James in his press conference and in his tweet, the buzzwords that he used in relation to Daryl Morey were misinformed, hurt, financial, emotional, spiritual, in as politically correct a way as possible. LeBron James made it clear for everyone that he, and in my view, many players in the N.B.A. are, to be frank, furious with Daryl Morey's actions in, again, stating that he feels people should support Hong Kong and stand with democracy. Okay, so we gotta break this down. All right, listen. And this is my view and how I'm seeing this, and then we'll analysis. But in terms of Daryl Morey, and we touched on it last week, the situation between Hong Kong and China, complicated, historic. All right, Hong Kong, as I mentioned on the show, in 1997 decided to unify with China. One country, two systems. Hong Kong's system of government leans much more democratic. You have a president, Congress. I'm not specifically sure, but their system of government in Hong Kong mirrors. Is it the exact same as our democracy? Absolutely not. India is the largest democracy in the world. Does their democracy are they basically just a clone of the United States? Absolutely not. And this is principle, this is key in this entire situation. For me and in my view of it, we need to recognize these cultural, traditional distinctions. And people getting upset with LeBron and angry and so on and forth. And, you need to be in favor of democracy. And you quoted Martin Luther King in the past and on and on and on. And if you take these progressive stances domestically and in issues that relate to your life as an American, as an African American, so on and forth, then you need to take these stances across the board. I understand that argument, sure. But when you are applying that worldview to a distinctly different worldview and culture, you need to take that into consideration. All right? The quote, discretion is the better part of valor. Far too many people today, want to have this William Wallace mentality of going to war, going to the mattresses, going all out for what you believe in order to gain some greater good. They're not recognizing that very approach in a different society may do more harm than good. I'm raising my voice here at the Cape Cod Media Center. Maybe I need to calm down a little bit. People are working here. But that is, for me, fundamental to this issue. I've said it before, okay? You may have an opinion about a friend of yours, okay? And that might be correct. But if you go over that friend's house and you're eating dinner with their family and you inject your 2 cents in that setting at their family dinner table, at that point in time, it doesn't matter the merits of what you were saying. Because beyond that, you're out of line being in somebody else's dwelling and taking an authoritative stance. That's not your place in that scenario. If that person's parent or if that person's sibling said the same thing, it would be received night and day differently. Excuse me. And that is the foundation for me of this Daryl Morey situation. It's that Daryl Morey, a highly intelligent individual. Why do I say that? Well, if you graduate from Northwestern and then obtain your graduate degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, I'm going to assume that you're bright. Furthermore, Daryl Morey, general manager of the Houston Rockets, for whom Yao Ming, N.B.A. Hall of Famer, outstanding human being, ambassador for basketball and peaceful and prosperous relations between China and the United States and China. This is a close friend of Daryl Morey's. The Houston Rockets are the biggest, most important, I was gonna say favoritist. That's probably not a word, okay? They're the #1 team in China. And so Morey, more than any NBA executive, based on his background, his educational background, and his professional experience as a general manager for the Houston Rockets, must understand how Chinese society functions. Okay, let's bring in the history angle, as that's my background. We are coming up on the 50-year anniversary of President Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon. Again, anyway, sometimes my words, it is what it is. Traveling to China, I believe this was 1972. We will get that graphic for you. Coming up on the 50-year anniversary of Nixon going to China to meet with Mao Zedong and begin the process of normalizing relations between the two nations. Early 70s. As I said, I believe it was 1972. Folks, the world is in the heart of the Cold War. Vietnam War has been established, all right? But the Vietnam War was a proxy war between the United States, democratic capitalist society, and not so much China. Yes, Vietnam does border China. China is a communist nation, but more so Russia. Or not Russia, the Soviet Union, the USSR. Communist, authoritarian society. All right? Learn this during my college years. We used to use terms like the first world, the second world, the third world. During the Cold War, the first world, represented democratic and capitalist societies. The second world represented communist societies. And the third world was everybody else. So during the Cold War, these two superpowers, United States, Soviet Union, and oh, by the way, China, not necessarily considered a superpower at this point in time, but nonetheless, when you are the most populous nation in the world and one of the largest economies in the world with one of the most powerful militaries in the world. Again, this is 1972. This is not the 21st century, in which many people recognize that China, obviously the Soviet Union, I'm going a little fast here, but the Soviet Union did transition, if you will. Late 1980s, Berlin Wall came down, 1989. President Reagan had that famous quote. And so the Soviet Union became Russia. And this is, again, a point where I have to, many people saying China, it's a communist society. It's not a communist society in the mid and late 20th century phrase or understanding of the term. China's not a communist society. We have very few communist society. All right, in terms of a communist society, to each according to his need, so on and forth. Get that quote. I should know it, as I'm quite a fan of Mr. Karl Marx and his outstanding works. Das Kapital, at the forefront, an economics classic. Again, it's on one side of the ledger. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, also an economics classic on the other side of the ledger. But two classics, that's just not debatable. Whether you agree or disagree, they're both classic works of literature. All right, and then obviously Marx's Communist Manifesto, which lays out the blueprint that many governments took and then modified, to form their regimes. Soviet communism, Chinese communism in the 20th century, let me just be clear. They're not mirroring or doing all the things that Marx espoused in his work. Not going to get too deep into that, but I hear a lot of people saying, well, China, this is, again, 2019, we're almost a quarter of the way into the 21st century. And people, China's a communist. It's not a communist society. All right? They are a one-party system, all right, similar to Russia, who's had the same president for well over 20 years, but they have democratic structures. This is not, communism, where the government controls it's called a command economy. So the government really just controls the economy. That's not the case in China. The government does have the final say, just like the government in this country has the final say. This history lesson has gone on, it will continue to go on. Okay? And bringing it back to LeBron James and Daryl Morey, all right? Daryl Morey's 7-word tweet will cost the N.B.A. an $8 billion a year business. Of that $8 billion, it's debatable, but up to as much as $4 billion, the N.B.A.'s revenue, up to that much. That, it may not be that, maybe 3, 2, 1. It's not less than $1 billion. I know it for a fact. Okay, when 500 million people minimum are tuning in to view your product, your company is generating at least $1 billion. Okay, so of the $8 billion the N.B.A. generates, up to half of that can be accredited to the China market, which the N.B.A. has been fostering since 1979. 40 years of work. A 7-word tweet. Notable setback. Okay, so back to LeBron James and Daryl Morey. All right, and my view of LeBron James' statements. Okay, it's that for this individual, now, all right, and let me address this. Back to Hong Kong and the protest. The protesters in Hong Kong, we discussed this, they're fighting against an extradition bill instituted by the government. Hong Kong and China One country, two systems. One country, two systems. The Hong Kong government wants to enact legislation, whereas, you just check because people have to use the studio. Okay, winding down, but we're getting where we need to be. Hong Kong government wants to institute a system whereas people in the criminal justice system in Hong Kong, which is a part of China, can be extradited to China and serve their prison term there. Folks in Hong Kong, just over 7 million people. And once again, China, 1.37 billion people. Okay? This is a drop in the ocean. That is huge, and people might not recognize it. Oh, Hong Kong, or China. China's actually in the west. Hong Kong's a little bit in the east in terms of where they are. And by the way, again, some more history. This is the equivalent of the distance between the United States and Puerto Rico, or the United States and Cuba. This is the equivalent. All right? So we remember, history people maybe more so, we did have that Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 1960s, in which the world was very much on the brink of a nuclear exchange. Backdrop for that was the Soviet Union decided that they were going to install nuclear missiles in Cuba, which is a communist country that happens to be less than 100 miles from America's border. No, we were not happy. And as we said, those were the results. And fortunately, calmer heads prevailed, and there was not a nuclear exchange then. Not sure how many years. We'll get that for you on the stage. On the screen. China and Hong Kong, that's the same thing. The Hong Kong island nation, but it's, it's very close, just like, much closer than, I didn't realize, quick aside, Hawaii, which is the United States, Hawaii is 3,000 miles from the California coast. Sometimes we think, oh, Hawaii, it's 3,000 miles from California and 3,000 miles from Japan. It's in the smack dab middle of the ocean. Shout out to my good friend Kyle Warma, the HBO. I'm getting animated, I'm making some mistakes. The ESPN 30 for 30 classic Hawaiian, all about Eddie Aikau. Just tremendous. All right, this situation, Hong Kong, China, very close. I would say less than 100 miles. We'll get that for you on the screen also. Again, Hong Kong, population-wise, so minuscule compared to the population of China. They're one country. They said they want the prisoners to go into China. Because there's two systems, if the rights and the treatment that a prisoner will receive in Hong Kong, by all accounts, would be decidedly favorable to the rights and treatment that they would receive within the Chinese penal system. And that is at the core of these protests that have been going on since March. They don't want that to be taking place, they want a little bit more control and autonomy, even though it's one nation. There are distinct differences, and the protesters are saying, we need to have, we need this distinction to stay in place. We don't need our people going over to this other nation. All right. My issue with Daryl Morey, he put out this 7-word tweet, which many people agree with, in terms of the spirit, that these protests need to be respected, so on and forth. The complexities of the matter, most people are not aware of, or just are making correlations to our society and our way of protest and the way that social change works here versus there. It's, in my opinion, untrue, or not. That's wrong. That's just wrong. They're just not recognizing the distinct dynamics. In this country, United States of America, and if there's an issue in Alabama, if there's an issue, in Idaho, if there's an issue in Michigan, if there's an issue in New York, it's still one form of government. Okay? At the heart of many of these issues between China and Hong Kong is it's two systems within one nation. And that's what complicates things to a level most people aren't understanding. Right? Hawaii does not have a different form of government. They might have the state government, but we have our supremacy clause. So the Constitution, the federal government trumps all state governments. And that's been a long-standing, but that's the way it works here. And it's going to work. Whereas in terms of Hong Kong and China, there's a distinction. All right, I got about 5 minutes. All right, so we're gonna have to land this ship here. My issue with Daryl Morey is, if this was the stand that you were going to take, if this was the cross that you were determined to bear, all right, respect, there is merit there, and if that's what you're going to do, all right, I tip my hat to you, but the consequences are going to be severe. For you, Daryl Morey, the individual, you can forget about being the general manager of the Houston Rockets. You can forget about any continued relationship with the N.B.A. Listening to EEI today, good caller, you noted the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is at the center of the United States and China's trade agreement. The numbers are something like $980 billion. It could very well, Trans-Pacific Partnership, it does. We're talking about trillions of dollars. Certainly not millions. Didn't say billions. Trillions of dollars worth of trade and commerce. Important that these societies work this agreement out. Or, and again, this is kind of where I push back. Why did Nixon go to China almost 50 years ago? Yes, there was a little bit of quote-unquote détente. The United States was having serious problems with the Soviet Union, the Cold War. China, another communist nation, but in terms of détente, if we can have better relations with China, that would improve, and so you don't have necessarily the Soviet Union, China versus America, but America versus the Soviet Union, but they're having a better relation with China. That could make the overall situation much better for everyone, or at least the United States. But what do you want for an alternative? Again, United States strongest military. China, most people. Do we want a full-out, actual military conflict? Or do we want to try to work out our disagreements? That's what people call hard power. Or do we want to work out our disagreements through soft power? And that's, money. So Daryl Morey, my issue is that he, for all his intelligence and based on his actions since, he sent out this tweet, he's basically been in hiding, he did not recognize the level and the nature of the consequences economically, politically, and socially. So he does not want to go down with the ship. He is not willing to stand at the head of this movement. Therefore, he opens himself up to criticism. Folks, that's gonna do it. Go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe as you feel the need. I am your host, the Cape Cod Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King. We want to thank you for tuning in to SandCity Sports, and we will see you here back again the next time.
Yes, we piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just in the Mars pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to retake ourselves. So yes, we piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just in the Mars pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to embrace ourselves. Yeah.